is good, everyone? What is good? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're jumping back into the Go Battle League arena, this time jumping once again into the MonoType Cup, featuring a line with a Shadow Pinsir on the lead. Shadow Pinsir is extremely hard hitting. It's running the fast move Fury Cutter as well as the charge moves of X Scissor and Close Combat. Close Combat allows Shadow Pinsir to hit like an absolute truck, and the bug type moves also shred dark and psychic type Pokemon. As you'll see in the battles, although Shadow Pinsir hits very hard, it is quite possibly the most frail Pokemon I have ever seen. And as such, we will be supporting this Shadow Pokemon with a Coffin on the safe switch, as well as Vigoroth as our closer. And those two are interchangeable depending on the matchups. We actually do swap the Vigoroth for a double after our first set because I realized that as our initial line stands, we don't have enough play against other Cofagrigises. Cofagrigi? Question mark? Which is actually a common theme for a lot of my teams. I'm kind of just underestimating the presence and the power of the Ghost Coffin. But that's kind of beside the point. It is still early-ish season, so we're still running with some spice here, trying to have some fun, win some battles with Shadow Pinsir. So without further ado, let's get and hop straight into our first set. And actually, before we get into this first set, I did want to show that I am double checking my Pokemon to make sure I'm running the right line because there is a bug going on right now amongst the many bugs going on with the Pokemon Go app. But sometimes you will be queued into a battle running the wrong line or a Pokemon with the wrong moveset, especially if you have recently changed the line you're running or changed the moveset on a Pokemon. So just double check. It does help to restart the app as well if you do make changes to the line you're running or to the moveset that you're running on a specific Pokemon. But hopping straight into the first battle, we have a tough lead. It might look like a decent lead, but the reality is that there aren't very many great leads in this cup for Shadow Pinsir. As the opponent pivots into their Shadow Dragonair and bang! Shadow Pinsir dealing the heavy close combat damage as the opposing trainer is so shook that they end up throwing the body slam into our Ghost Coffin. Cofagrigus, able to get the Shadow Claw down, will be greeting the opponent's Registeel as it rejoins the battle with a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does about 35% damage to the opponent's Registeel, which will start getting them a little bit low, but Registeel able to outpace our Coffin, land this Zap Cannon, which will put our Coffin extremely low as the opponent is able to snipe with one charm from their Shadow Gramble. And this is going to be trouble for us as Shadow Gramble is chunking with these charms. We throw on alignment, allowing the opponent to sneak through a charm. I was in a frenzy, not sure of how to play this out, desperate to get damage onto the opponent as they do no shield our body slam, but we return the no shield in kind. And that was our demise as one charm will be able to knock out our Shadow Pinsir as the Gramble calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping straight into the next battle, the opponent leads with a Kanto Sandslash, but immediately pivots into a Haxorus. We're going to allow the Haxorus to debuff us, fire off this X Scissor, hoping to get a shield from the opponent, and we do get the shield before swapping into our Coffin. Cofagrigus will be receiving double resisted counter damage from the opponent's counters, but they will be hitting us for neutral damage, choosing to throw that breaking swipe in place of the Night Slash that they may or may not be running before reaching this Psychic. Psychic is able to get the KO onto the opponent's Dragon, and they will be bringing in their Sandslash. Kanto Sandslash typically runs with Night Slash and Earthquake, and that Night Slash will get the Cofagrigus extremely low, but is not enough damage to knock us out. The Coffin reaching one debuffed Night Slash, which still does heavy damage onto the Kanto Sandslash, but the problem is that the opponent's Sandslash has built up so much energy here. We go for the catch of the Earthquake onto the Shadow Pinsir. Remember, this is resisted damage, and bang! Earthquake one-shots the Shadow Pinsir, and I'm telling my chat, how is this possible? We caught the move, and I thought that put us in a winning position, but it actually ended up being our demise, as Shadow Pinsir may have had decent or will have decent play into Hypno, but as it is, this Vigoroth is dealing resisted counter damage. We'll be hitting for neutral with these body slams as we are at the back-to-back body slams, but the opponent can very easily shield this and farm down our Vigoroth or get to one more charge move, as they are at that charge move now, and this will allow the Hypno to call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match, as we do get to one final body slam, but our Vigoroth is extremely low. And will Vigoroth be able to get there? No, I called it too early, but it ended up still being a GG. Sandslash calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have Greedent on the lead against Shadow Pinsir. Shadow Pinsir is resisting these bullet seeds from the opponent, but will not be appreciating this body slam damage. I should be throwing the charge move here, as I am, and then dipping out into our Vigoroth safe swap, as Pinsir firing off the close combat, able to claim the opponent's first shield before we do finally pivot into our Vigoroth. Vigoroth will be able to tank this crunch. Does the opponent get the debuff? They unfortunately do, and that is a huge debuff considering the opponent pivots into their Shadow Gramble, once again running charm, once again absolutely chunking my Vigoroth. And at this point, I can't bring in the Shadow Pinsir, as our Fury Cutters will be resisted, and Shadow Pinsir will get potentially one shot by one charm. Like this, we do bring in our Coffin. akariiiXX able to expend one shield, and we do catch a break with not getting debuffed by the opponent's crunch, but we are confronted once again by the Greedent. We catch this charge move onto our Pinsir. Is it the crunch? It is. Goodbye, Pinsir. Sorry for using you as a meat shield, but you did us a great service, as we are greeted by the opponent's Vigoroth, and this is looking like a very tough situation, as even though the opponent is dealing double resisted counter damages, it will be extremely difficult to close out this end game with our akariiiXX alone, as we do expend our final shield and we do throw the Psychic on CMP tie with the opponent's body slam. That is double resisted damage, but at this point, any damage is significant damage. Will this Psychic be enough to knock out the opponent? It is not. We're going for the aggressive farm down with our double resisted Shadow Claws, but we're not able to get it, as the opponent reaches one final body slam, allowing the Vigoroth to call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. So a very tough start to our set with Shadow Pinsir, as we once again have a difficult lead here. We build up to the close combat, past the close combat, catching the first move on our Vigoroth. Is it going to be the Shadow Ball? It is not. It was just the Dark Pulse, but it was a good catch anyway. I was happy about that. But the opponent greets our Vigoroth with a mirror match, their own Vigoroth. Are they going to go for the counter down? No, they do not, as they are forced to throw energy here, or they're not forced to, but they're choosing to throw their body slam here. And at this point, I'm happy to let the Vigoroth go down, bring in the Shadow Pinsir, hopefully get the farm down, but I quickly realized that is much too optimistic. We won't be able to get there, so I will expend a little bit of energy to throw that X-Scissor. The opponent brings in their next Pokemon. I didn't get a chance to see what it was, but it will be getting close combated regardless, and it is the Coffin coming back in. So that is one of the major drawbacks with Shadow Pinsir, is that we really have no moves that can even touch the Shadow or the akariiiXX, which is very unfortunate because that is a mainstay of this monotype meta. As we will be firing off a Psychic into the opponent's Coffin, they do expend a shield to block that damage, and we will be returning that shield in kind. As we are now down 0 shields to 1, we have all shields down, and the opponent still has a full health Registeel. I'm looking for a win condition here. Will we be able to catch on our Pinsir? No, the switch clock is just quite not up yet, and we will be getting KO'd by the opponent's Zap Cannon as the tin can stand strong. We're building up to as much energy as possible. Remember, the opponent still does have one shield. I was hoping to go for a bait there, but like this, the opponent will be able to Focus Blast. Resisted damage, but Registeel still calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Getting into the next battle, we have another tough lead, Slurpuff on the lead against Shadow Pinsir. We immediately pivot into our coffin because realistically, this is our best response to this Charmer. And it is always a little bit alarming when you pivot and the opponent does not pivot, because now I'm really feeling like there's something that definitely doesn't want to see the coffin in the back, but we're not going to be able to have it for late game, as we will expend one shield on the opponent's flamethrower, building up to nearly 100 energy before firing off this Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will be enough to knock out the Slurpuff, and the opponent is happy to let their Slurpuff go down. Opponent brings in a Shadow Kanto Muck. Will they respect the potential Psychic from our akariiiXX? No, they do not. Bang! That nearly one-shots the opponent's Muck, and the coffin is able to get to another charge move, as this Shadow Ball will be putting shield pressure on the opponent, and they choose to expend their final shield. Opponent building up energy with their Kanto Ninetales, reaching their first charge move. This is just going to be a Weather Ball, but we respect the damage by shielding, hoping that we will be able to easily get to a Bulldoze, but we don't. Opponent outpaces us to the Overheat. Bang! Overheat does heavy damage onto our Vigoroth, and we throw the Body Slam instead of the Bulldoze. This is absolute chaos, as we are now forced to go with our Shadow Pinsir, hoping to farm down, not able to get there, throwing this X-Scissor on the CMP tie. X-Scissor will of course be enough damage to knock out the K9, as Shadow Pinsir calls game, farming down the opponent's Shadow Muck, allowing us to secure the 1-4. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. That's what it took. Granted, there were many misplays, but that's what it took to get us a win with our Shadow Pinsir. Hopping into the first battle of the next set, we have another tough lead, Nidorina on the lead against Shadow Pinsir. Pinsir does not have anything that can touch this Nidorina, as we will be allowing the debuff to go through before pivoting into our newly formed line featuring double on the safe swap. The opponent counters with their swap in of K9, this one being a non-shadow running Fire Spin on the fast move. Double able to reach this Body Slam, which will deal respectable damage onto the opponent's K9. We over farmed just a touch, knowing that we will be able to outpace the opponent, but we respect the Weather Ball damage by expending our first shield. Double able to fire off this charge move. It will get the opponent extremely low, and like we said, we are able to outpace, firing off another Body Slam just before the opponent reaches another Weather Ball. The opponent expends their final shield. We reach the Body Slam, but pivot into our coffin, as this is a positive matchup for us. We still do have one shield, which we can shield just in case we do expend it there. The opponent had built up to the Shadow Ball. We respect the potential Shadow Ball, and now able to farm up past the Shadow Ball almost to 100 energy. Bang! Knocking out the opponent's Shadow Hypno, greeting the Nidorina that will be returning back in with this Psychic, and this Psychic will be doing huge, super effective damage. Bang! Onto the opponent's Nidorina. Nidorina is now very low. Will they be throwing their Thunderbolt? No, it's just going to be a Poison Fang, and that will not be enough damage to knock us out. But the opponent makes a great combo play with their K9, bringing it in, firing off the Weather Ball into our debuffed coffin, securing the knockout. As Double returns to the battle, throwing one double kick before firing off a Body Slam that will allow it to KO the opponent's Ninetales, comboing with the Shadow Pinsir. We go for the BM close combat. It's not every day that we get to throw one of those, and we will savor this moment as Shadow Pinsir calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have a solid lead here against the opponent's Hypno. This matchup is very contingent upon the charge moves that the opponent is running. If they are running the standard moveset, Thunder Punch and Shadow Ball, we will be able to win this matchup in the 0 and 1 shield scenarios. But the question here is, what moveset are they running? They are running Thunder Punch. Will we be able to secure this matchup? Yes, we are able to reach another X-Scissor. This will be knocking out the opponent's Hypno, but they are choosing to expend their final shield, securing switch advantage against our remaining 2 Pokemon. And at this point, our play here is to expend one shield, respect the Shadow Ball, and go for the full farm down with our Shadow Claws onto the opponent's Hypno. Hypno complicit in allowing us to farm them down, but we are unfortunately greeted by an Umbreon in the back. Opponent pivoting from their Umbreon into a Registeel, and this is just horrible as Registeel will be dealing heavy super effective focus blast damage. How much damage does it do? I told my chat I'm going to take a focus blast for science. How much damage does this do? It absolutely blenders our goat as Registeel calls game. Well played by the opponent, and thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have some spice from the opponent running Leafeon on the lead. That's a positive lead for our Pinsir as we will be resisting the fast move as well as the leaf blades from the opponent. As such, the opponent pivots into their Berserker and we will immediately be counter swapping into our double. We have now gone one shield down, but double able to get the double kick down. Berserker is a glass cannon of its own, not able to survive those double kicks, allowing our goat to bring in a massive amount of energy, back-to-back body slams, which will become one body slam, one wild charge onto this opponent's Shadow Machamp. Machamp, bang, takes heavy wild charge damage, now at 1 HP, able to reach the charge move against our Coffin, but they have not built up enough charge or enough energy for that to be a payback. As such, we will not respect it, and the opponent is left with one shield and a Leafeon. And this is looking awesome for us as our double was able to put in an insane amount of work, taking out 2 Pokemon while also claiming 1 shield, all at the price of 1 of our shields. As the opponent will be firing off a Leaf Blade, we're able to catch the next Leaf Blade onto our Shadow Pinsir. How much resisted damage will this do? It does over 50%. And Shadow Pinsir, I cannot stress it enough, is just so insanely glassy. It is so crazy to witness, as we will be reaching this X Scissor, and it will be enough to knock out the opponent's Leafeon as Shadow Pinsir once again calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match, and thank you for the spice. As we hop into our next battle, we have Shadow Pinsir on the lead against Registeel. This is a matchup we've seen before. Even though Pinsir is able to deal heavy, super effective damage with this close combat, it will not be enough to secure the matchup for us as bang! It does massive damage onto the Registeel. Shadow Pinsir will expend 1 shield here. Will we be able to get the farm down? We'll never find out because the opponent pivots into a Shadow Hypno. Shadow Hypno is greeted by our Cofagrigus, which will be firing off a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball goes shielded by the opponent. They respect our damage. Will we be respecting the opponent's damage? No. Is this going to be the bait? It is the Fire Punch shield bait. The opponent not able to successfully bait us as we once again reach another Shadow Ball. This will be knocking out the opponent's Hypno, but no, they choose to expend their final shield to preserve that energy on their Hypno. We're going for the farm down of the opponent's Hypno, but we over tap. We reached the X Scissor, but we throw it on CMP tie, and I was in disbelief. Does Pinsir actually lose CMP to a Hypno? How is this possible? As we do expend our final shield and will be greeted by the opponent's Clefable in the back. This is a Fairy Wind Clefable, and as such, they are not able to dish out as much damage with their fast move, but they will be generating energy extremely quickly. Like this, they are able to reach a Meteor Mash before we swap out, and I just want to point out that resisted close combat from the Shadow Pinsir did 40 to 50% damage to this Clefable, which is just insane. Don't sleep on the damage output of Shadow Pinsir. As the opponent does reach a Moonblast, fires it off into our goat, but we are now at the back-to-back body slams. Will this body slam be enough to KO the Clefable? It is, as the opponent brings back in their Registeel. Registeel does not have energy and will be taking this wild charge, which allows the goat to call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match as Double clutching up for us once again. And speaking of the GOAT, it is literally a GOAT, but it feels like less of the GOAT when it's on the opponent's team, as we are able to catch this body slam onto our ghost type Pokemon that does heavily 2 times resisted damage, but the opponent staying in, building up to the payback. I'm not sure how much it does, but regardless, I'm able to reach a Psychic. This does about 40% damage onto the opponent. They've built up an insane amount of energy, and I'm telling my chat, how much realistically does a payback do? We're not going to find out, but it will be heavy damage. Spoilers, we'll see it later. as we do expend our first shield to block the opponent's payback. Opponent returning the shield, as they will be able to outpace us and reach another payback. And here is where we will see how much damage does the payback do. Bang! It one-shots the coffin from almost full health. That does an insane amount of damage. And I ran the simulations on it after it does almost 70% damage to a akariiiXX. So there you go, double putting in work. Our Shadow Pinsir able to fire off this close combat, resisted into the opponent's Shadow Muck. That does over 50% damage. We will be bringing in our double, able to get to this body slam, outpacing the opponent just before they reach their first charge move. And as such, the opponent will be expending their final shield to preserve the energy and health on this Muck. We're going to respect their damage output. Thankfully, it wasn't the acid spray. It was just a thunder punch, but we were able to expend our final shield, block that damage, fire off another body slam, KO the opponent's Muck. And here I do misplay as I'm counting the side strikes. It takes them 5 to get, or cycle cuts, it takes them 5 to get to the side strike. I knew I wasn't going to be able to outpace them, as we do lose CMP tie there. How much damage though will this X Scissor do to the Shadow Mewtwo? Will it one shot? Yes, it does. It one shots, but Pinsir, is it going to be able to Fury Cutter down? It is not, as double kicks down, resisted double kicks down our Shadow Pinsir, as double calls game. Well played by the opponent, and well played by all of my opponents today, as we did secure a 3-2 set with our Shadow Pinsir. And again, we did have some misplays, but we were rewarded with a Wooloo here, which is always awesome. And that will conclude our battles for today. I had so much fun running Shadow Pinsir. It was honestly, for lack of better words, it was a vibe. It was a meme also, but I really did have a great time learning on the fly. I didn't run very many simulations beforehand because I just wanted to enjoy the process, and it was extremely enjoyable, both seeing the damage output from the Shadow Pinsir, but also just being utterly surprised at how absolutely frail this thing was. But it was a joy nonetheless, and I would fully recommend, if you do have the resources, the Stardust specifically, to build this Pokemon for this limited cup. I would recommend it if you're looking for some fun battles. If you made it this far in the video, please leave me a comment down below. Let me know how Ultra League's going for you, how MonoType Cup is going for you, how life is going for you. Just give me an update, let me know how you're doing, and let me know about any future content you'd like to see on the channel. But that's gonna be all for me. Thank you so much for stopping by. Remember to enjoy the small things. Peace.